Hello lords and ladies, it is I, Sir Gwaine Evermere, and in today's video I want to discuss something I often see overlooked in Arthurian legend media, specifically regarding probably the most famous part of Arthurian legend, that being the monumental affair Guinevere had with Lancelot. As I would argue it's probably one of, if not the most famous love triangle in fiction. So what aspect do I think often goes overlooked in media regarding this affair? Lancelot and Arthur. It seems a lot of people tend to forget that a love triangle meets at all three sides, and not just two. What do I mean? Lancelot fought beside Arthur for years. He isn't just another knight to Arthur, as a lot of media tends to show him. And it's not just that he's the best knight of the Round Table either. Lancelot is often described as Arthur's best friend, even sometimes going as far as describing them as brothers, as Lancelot was also one of the earlier knights of his Round Table. It's a key part of this story, as I'd argue he was closer to Lancelot than he was ever to Guinevere, as a major key part of the downfall of their marriage was that Arthur was too consumed by kingship. He was too focused on the country and the land of Britannia to properly be there for Guinevere, and for a long time Lancelot was with Arthur in those wars and conflict until he was signed to protect Guinevere and be her champion when they entered times of peace. However, a lot of media, for simplicity's sake, decides to completely avoid this or don't spend any time building a relationship between the two. For example, in The First Night and Merlin from the BBC. Let's start with The First Night. This movie, for those who have not seen it, is a great film and a fun time. It's only tackling the affair between Guinevere and Lancelot, yet the relationship between Arthur and Lancelot is borderline non-existent in this film. Now, to be fair, this film is clearly not trying to tell an authentic Arthurian legend story, and only really focusing on the affair and romance. But still, I don't get why they fully ignored this aspect of the story. I get not wanting to go in depth with other characters such as Mordred, so they changed who killed King Arthur, or dealing with the complexities of the downfall of Camelot. But if you wanted to focus on the romance, then why cut a third of the love triangle out, as it fully weakens the relationship? But I might be able to give The First Night a pass, as it's a movie and it has significantly reduced runtime to be able to tell a story that actually is meant to span decades in legend. However, Merlin from the BBC doesn't have this problem, as it's a TV show. Yet, it messes this up. So, Lancelot arrives, and Arthur just mocks him, and belittles him, and insults him. God, I hate Merlin's Arthur sometimes. But okay. Then he gains Arthur's respect before being exiled by Uther. They had had no real time to actually interact at this point. But okay. He then comes back later, and yet again, like the first time, he barely interacts with Arthur, instead forming more of a friendship with Merlin than Arthur. And I get it, Merlin's the main character, but you're tackling a story that has absolutely nothing to do with Merlin. So as a result, funnily enough, I end up disliking Lancelot and Guinevere more than I do in the actual legends. I mentioned this in my Merlin accuracy video, which is quite old, and it's my first video, and you can very clearly tell. But in Merlin, they try really hard to make sure you don't dislike Guinevere, to the point of making her kind of insufferable at times. Despite her low-born status in the show, she acts higher and mightier than her actual purple-clothed legend counterpart. But the reason this is quite unfortunate for her character is I kind of don't want to see her be happy. I'm not rooting for her to be happy. Okay, that sounded a bit harsh. The actress was lovely and she did a great job. I don't blame her at all, but the script made her kind of insufferable at times. She constantly lectures Arthur and others, she's never in the wrong, and when she is, she turns out to be right the entire time. And she often gets shoehorned very awkwardly into some of the stories where she isn't relevant. Meanwhile, in Arthurian legend, you don't spend a lot of time with Guinevere, but the time you do spend is important. You feel how isolated she is. You feel how desperately she wants a connection with Arthur when he can't give it to her. And even before it gets to that point, she does have several high and mighty moments. What happens is often a character knocks her off her pedestal. I mentioned it in my Merlin video that the scene with the peasant food doesn't work for me, as that isn't Arthur and Guinevere's dynamic. It's the opposite of this. But to get back on topic with Lancelot, this also ruins his storyline, unfortunately, as I don't really care about her, and because there's no relationship with Arthur to hold on to, that entire plotline crumbles and they just sweep it under the rug. And I don't think many people fully understand just how much Arthur values Lancelot. Even after the affair, he doesn't want to go to war against Lancelot, as even after the betrayal he still holds him dear, as he must get pushed into it by his remaining knights of the Round Table, mainly Gwaine. Such as in Le Morte d'Arthur after Guinevere and Lancelot leave, he says,
I am right heavy, said the king, for I may never hold against Sir Lancelot, for he is peerless and passeth all knights. Of all knights I loved him most, and of all knights I trusted him most.
or especially in Vulgate Moatu,
And the king said that of all the treasons and shames that had ever been done to him, none grieved him as much as this one, that he who he had trusted most, and whom he had loved more than any other, had betrayed him.
referring to having to go to war with Lancelot. He is devastated, but in that state he has such a strong connection to Lancelot as a friend, no, as a brother, that he could even consider overlooking this betrayal. Keep in mind as well, they are in a heavily Christian culture, and Arthur is beyond a devout Christian. So for him to even consider not punishing Lancelot is unheard of, and speaks massively to their bond. Arthur is often pushed by Gwaine due to Lancelot killing 2 unarmed knights to make his escape with Guinevere. Those 2 knights being Sir Gareth and Sir Gaheris, both brothers of Gwaine, but not due to Lancelot's betrayal of Arthur. The fact he was considering sparing Lancelot says a lot about his relationship with him, and I really think more stories should flesh it out. As I think at minimum half the tragedy of that affair comes from of Lancelot and Arthur's friendship, if not more of it. I truly believe that this aspect is what made this story so legendary and what made it live on for centuries. It's not only a tragic backstabbing of a wife, but also of a brother in arms who he fought beside and would gladly gave his life for.
Alas, said King Arthur, this unhappy day. Now, alas, I am sore hurt. Alas, that ever I was crowned king, for now I see all mine own knights dead away, and now I myself am upon the point to die, but would to God that I might see Sir Lancelot, for now I am sure that Sir Lancelot and I shall never meet.